The mistake that actually grew my channel is this. I used to think everything had to be perfect for me to start. That in order for me to put my best foot forward, my actual content had to be up to par to the visual perception I had of myself that I wanted to share with others. And the biggest mistake that I had that actually grew my channel was the fact that I was willing to post imperfect content in order to grow. So what does that look like? First, starting off, I had literally had no idea what I wanted to do in terms of content, but I knew I wanted to build a channel. So what did I do? I posted about the difficulties and situation I found myself currently in at that current time. Why was that a mistake? Number one, it was very self-centered. I've learned through my YouTube journey that the more you talk about yourself, the less people you're actually able to benefit, because you're coming from a place where it's just me, where I think a lot of the success that I found is providing value to those on YouTube, on the actual platform itself, right? But the reason that mistake propelled me forward, right? The whole idea of posting imperfect content in order to move forward was that it got me started. I think if I had waited to actually come up with the most perfect content, which I think it's safe to say the most perfect content does not exist, but if I were to wait for that, nothing would happen, right? I've grown my channel from 3 subscribers on January 31st, 2025, to now 50 subscribers, March 3rd, 2025, right? So that's a 47 subscriber base increase, right? And my first ever post was why I was a failure in life, right? You can say that people may relate with that, maybe if they're going through a difficult time, but a whole context of that video was just basically me, right? And as I've learned, as time progressed, I've learned to take aspects of what I've learned along my journey and provide value, right? My first video was more of like a self-centered way to put my troubles out there, right? To receive sympathy from the world. Now, my perception moving forward is how can I provide value based on what I've learned thus far along my journey? Let's say you're a beginner YouTuber, right? You're a small creator who's looking to grow their channel. The way you would benefit from my channel, my content, is if I were to actually provide value to you that would help you achieve your goals, right? And my mistake was thinking that I needed to realize that in the very beginning in order to start, right? And now this is going to take like a perspective on the current situation, right? If I hadn't taken the first step to post my first video, I wouldn't have come to the realization that maybe instead of me just dumping all of my failures of life onto one video, what I could do instead is actually provide value from what I've learned, right? My first video was I'm 28, single, unemployed, and living at home. That was my first ever video, right? And that video essentially was just me dumping like I was going through at that time. But what I could have done instead, and what I started to do moving forward, was how can I take where I currently am and move in a direction to achieve where I want to be, right? And share what I've done through that time span to you as the viewer. So if you're trying to excel your life toward that direction, you're able to find value. But I wouldn't have known that unless I posted my first video, right? And who knows, maybe in the future, I'll learn more insights to how my current content now will be vastly different than my content in the future because of the stuff I learn along the way, right? So the biggest mistake that actually propelled my channel forward was posting imperfect content, was actually just getting started, right? And if you're able to get over that hump, over that feeling of, I'm going to post this, it's going to flop, this is not my best work, but I'm going to post it anyway because I'm disciplined and I want to be consistent and I want to, things out, see if they actually work. If that's your mindset, then you're going to succeed a lot faster than someone who's a little hesitant to post because they're afraid of perfection or they're striving towards, or they're afraid of failure. They're afraid of actually putting something out there. That may not be their best work, but you have to go through those phases where you post something and it may not be your best work because your best work is relative to where you are now. Are you telling me that you're not going to get better as time progresses? You're bound to get better as time progresses, right? I've come to the realization too, after posting my first couple of videos and how imperfect they were, that a lot of the value, you have to think about it. Why do you actually go on YouTube? What is the reason you go on YouTube? Number one, to be entertained. Number two, to learn things, right? So if you aren't creating content that's either entertaining or educational, you may not succeed, or it may not be that beneficial towards you to actually create content, right? Because if your whole reasoning to create content is to make money, then you really have to fall into the aspect of like what it is you do what you do. Like a lot of people, they like the whole vlogging thing, which is cool, right? I think like I first started out, like I was really into vlogging myself. But if no one really knows who you are and you're simply just like a day in my life, maybe that is entertaining, right? Depending on who you are. But if you're a small creator, you don't have that much clout, or you don't have like, aren't well known, then why would anyone be interested in like your day in life like content? I think like gradual phases of the mistakes you make that actually like help your channel is that, like, number one, you create content that you genuinely are interested in, right? So maybe it's like content, or like, right, depending on like what type of content you put out there, maybe it could be like, right? But I think if you're just starting out with fresh, like no skills or anything like that, maybe your content won't do that well, right? Because you're simply like this content for yourself. But I think as time progresses, you really have to think about like, who's your ideal audience member? Like who's your ideal, like, right? Because behind every view is a person. So if you're creating content, who are you creating content for? So for me, with this video, I'm creating content for someone who is a small creator just starting out on their journey and maybe isn't finding that much success currently doing what they're doing, right? Now, granted, I'm growing my channel from 3 subscribers to 50 subscribers in a month. So it isn't like drastic, right? It isn't like 1,000 or 1,000,000 or like 1,000 subscribers, but I've done things to grow my channel, right? There's no denying that, right? From 3 to 50, right? And I could provide you value through like what has actually worked for me. And I think you would benefit from that because I'm coming from a perspective of someone who maybe was or is currently in your current position. I think especially like entrepreneurship or business, the biggest difference between like, and let's say for example, like world like programmed in is like the whole idea of that you can't make mistakes, right? And I understand that in certain like or certain career paths, like detrimental if you make a mistake, right? Like you're in the health field, or if you're in the like, say for example, like engineering field, right? Like if you're constructing like, or science, or detrimental if you make a mistake because there are other people's lives at risk, right? But I think if you're creating something like content, right? Or like content, like art, for example, you have to make those mistakes, right? Of course, if you have to assess if your mistakes are detrimental to others, but you have to make those mistakes in order to grow. If you don't start, if you aren't willing to make those mistakes, then you're not going to be able to understand where you are and where you need to go in order to achieve what you want to achieve. That's why like this whole like stuff, the biggest mistake that I made that like my channel was the fact that I posted stuff that was terrible, right? Like looking back at it, even though it's only been a month, like look at my old content and I'll somewhat cringe, right? I'm saying like, it may not even be like best product, right? It's just simply me talking in front of the camera to my phone. Like may not even be like the best like out there. But if you were to compare to where it was when I first started, it is vastly better, right? But I wouldn't get to this point unless I made adjustments along the way, right? Prior, my first ever videos were just me like, now you're mounted on my windshield, right? But prior, my phone was on my dashboard. So you got this angle where you would just see like my forehead. You wouldn't get like the ideal view where you're able to understand me properly. And plus I would be driving. So when I would speak, it would be difficult for you to hear me because I'm in a parked spot. It's very quiet. I'm in my car, right? The lighting is a little bit better than when I first started, but I would not be able to make these realizations unless I made those mistakes in the beginning. Let's take a look at short form. Short form content, I was doing way too much, right? Like it was just a lot, right? And I really thought to myself, I was making all of these minor edits, but what was the actual like I was trying to provide? So with my shorts, the one thing that I try to do is to provide like value. So how like tricks on how to grow on social media, right? And I aim to now lean more towards that than like actual like, right? Which I may not change in the future, but as of right now, that's kind of plan, right? Whereas my long form is just more so like the side of like personal development through content creation. So you need to make those mistakes and you have to be okay with making those mistakes because the more mistakes you make, the more you're able to actually realize what's wrong, right? This whole like feedback, this whole feedback loop, I think is something that you should take advantage of, especially if you're just starting out. If you're just starting out as a content creator, right? Make those mistakes. And those mistakes are going to propel you forward to places you may or may not even realize yet, right? So as I was creating like more towards about myself, I realized that maybe this may not be like the most ideal piece of content that you as a viewer would want to like, right? From a personal perspective, if someone like a vlog and maybe they're not that well known, like they're not like a celebrity or if they don't have that much clout, I don't think I would be as inclined to watch them, right? So I am really interested in watching like just random accounts if they provide value, right? I'll watch like where they talk about like the tricks on how to grow on social media, right? It's just like personal preference thing, but it's because they lean more on so like educational value on like a need that I'm trying to solve. Because I'm trying to grow my YouTube account. So if I find channels that like one spark my interest through their thumbnail, number two spark my interest through their title, then of course I'm going to be interested in their actual piece of content, right? I think if there was like a piece of advice or wisdom that I would want you to walk away from this video, it would be that to start where you are and don't be afraid to make those mistakes. Don't be afraid to seem imperfect in this perfect world. Because you're gonna make mistakes. Because I think you should actually strive to make more mistakes. Of course, like make them like you know what I mean, cautious and be careful, right? But aim to make mistakes because the more mistakes you make, number one, you have an agenda for tomorrow, right? Like if you're consistent with your content and you strive to make a piece of content every day and you make a mistake that one day, the next day you have an opportunity to fix it, right? So this is something that I've kind of myself is like, right now I'm gonna post a short and that short, the title like covers my forehead, but I think it does it too much. Like a visual perspective, I don't think it looks that like, so rather than fixing it right now, because like kind of late into production, I'm going to take that into consideration and then fix it for tomorrow's post, right? Again, it's just like run this continual feedback loop where the mistakes you make fuel your growth for tomorrow. If you aren't finding mistakes in your current work, then are you even growing, right? This applies to like many aspects, right? Look at basketball. Like you're a professional basketball player and you think you're perfect, you feel like you have nothing to work on, then are you really growing? Is it really about the end destination or is it about the process? I heard this saying, right? And this saying struck me like because I would be lying if I didn't say that I was into YouTube for the money, right? You have to really ask yourself, like, would anyone like in front of a camera or like content if it wasn't for the money, right? Maybe it's like a love, right? But we'll get back to that, right? But through this quote, I heard like guy said that like chase the game, because if you chase the money, the game won't come. But if you chase the game, the money will come, right? So you really have to think about that. He said, chase the game, don't chase the money, because if you chase the money, the game won't be there. If you chase the game, the money will be there, right? So what does that look like? For example, on YouTube, right? If you chase the money, what does that look like? You create content that maybe is very trendy, right? It will give you money, but maybe it won't be long lasting. Maybe you won't like make a personal brand for yourself. It'll be like quick. Whereas if you play for the game on YouTube, for example, you create like long-term brand where you build that rapport with your audience. It may lead to, of course, like true fans, your tribe. It may lead to like deals, you know, it may lead to like outside of YouTube, right? So if you stay true to the game versus like for money, then it's going to be vastly different. Like sports, right? If you're merely into basketball, okay, another thing too, right? So let's talk about football, like the NFL, right? Like have like quarterbacks that will like so much money, but then it won't leave like cap space for like teammates that are very talented, right? Whereas like look at these dynasties where their quarterback will take a pay cut in order to be able to support the salaries of other players, right? Because those quarterbacks, they're looking to win. Whereas the quarterbacks that take the money, maybe they're just in it for the money. Maybe, I'm not too sure. I'm not a quarterback, right? So it's kind of like that same mentality towards like, right? Like think about it long term. You know, don't be afraid to make those mistakes because I've learned so much, right? I think, as I said before, I would be lying if I said I wasn't into YouTube for the money, right? Or the possibility of the income that you could earn through YouTube. But I think as I've learned to accept the gradual process of how long it may take or of like highs and lows that may come with it, I've learned to kind of focus, stay dedicated to the game, right? Be consistent day in and day out. Try to get better 1% every day than you were last time. And of course, I haven't really achieved much other than like 50 subs. I hit 10K views, which was pretty cool, right? I don't know if it was within that month, but I got a notification from vidIQ that said I hit 10K views and 50 subs, which is cool, right? Maybe one day I'll say 50K subs. But I'm definitely a growth process, right? And you have something you have to like in the journey. And with the journey comes the mistakes that you make, right? I think another big mistake too Okay, I kind of a little more deeper, but a mistake that actually like my channel was the fact that I was in it for the money. Grant, I have not made any money yet, right? But I think just the fact that I was in it for the money, I learned that in order for you to be in it for the money, you have to be in it for the game, not the money. So it's like contradictory, right? Like you would think like, if I'm doing this, I'm gonna do this for the money. But what I learned, which actually helped me grow my channel, was that you have to be in it for the game, not the money, because the money will come if you're in it for the game. I'm just rambling, but in my head it makes a lot of sense, right? I would be lying like if I didn't tell you I was in this for the money, like YouTube, and the opportunities that may come, sponsorships, guest appearances, you never know. But I've learned through this process that you have to be dedicated to the game, and the game comes first over the money. Like if you're a quarterback, instead of you taking like it would be you taking a pay cut in order to get like weapons on your team. So that's like, for me, it would be like that perspective of like my salary in order to like better teammates. And honestly, for you, I'd probably like the same too, right? Dedicate yourself to the game. Like, of course, money is nice, right? But I think if you want like long-term growth on YouTube, it's the stuff that you avoid, right? It's the actual hard work of growing a brand, putting in the work daily, trying to get better, resonating with your audience. Of course, trends help, of course, but not heavily relying on trends. And it's funny too, because like call these realizations mistakes, right? Like in the beginning, it was like me posting like content, or it's like going into YouTube for the money, right? But when you call them mistakes, then these mistakes actually led you to like deeper path or like realization that you wouldn't have realized if it weren't for these mistakes. So can you really call them mistakes, or do you call them stepping stones? Or maybe I should rename this title from mistakes that helped me grow my channel to realizations that helped me grow my channel. We'll see. Here's my long form. I only get like 2 views, and I think like 3 of them are for me. So we'll work on that, right? But hopefully, like the goal is like form content for ads, but it's kind of a journey, right? I think if I was in it for the money, then I would like content would be vastly different than if I was doing it for the game, right? And I think that I am providing value, to be honest. Like, of course, I don't provide like the whole like how to grow a channel, right? But I think what I do provide is kind of like unique perspective on what I've done for my growth, but also a unique perspective on someone who's trying to play a long-term game here. Someone who is learning along the way and makes it a habit to actually learn on a daily basis. So take from this video what you will, but my hope is that even the most smallest piece of content that was able to provide you value actually provides you value, right? I would hope that like your perspective changes on this whole YouTube thing, or that you overcome that fear of like posting something that may not be like for you, right? But 50 subs, who would have thought? Honestly, like first month, goal is like within 1,000, right? But we're at 50, which is like the way there. But it's I feel like once we get the subs, the next thing we're gonna work on is the watch time or the views, right? Whether it be on shorts or through long form. But like I said, this whole like the need to be perfect, I would not know how shorts or long form worked unless I actually tried them out. Like I'm not on either of them, but I have dabbled in like creating like 30 for each this past month, right? Or 28, because there's 28 days in February. So for each day I posted like a piece of form and a short, right? And far from perfect for each, but I mean, call them, you learn from them, And this like there's between like real life and YouTube create on YouTube, right? Like the trial and error of things, like trying things out, not working, the feedback loop you receive, making the proper adjustments, and like seeing if they work out later on, But I'm 50 subs, so I'm not an expert, far from it. There are, other channels that are doing a lot better than me, but if comparison out of the window, I am extremely happy. And I just want to thank you, like, for subscribing to the channel, It's nice things grow, I hold like getting like garden, and it's like the work you can, grow. It's not the final vision, but it's just nice to see like an upward trend, something that you work on a daily basis, So to this video, right, the mistakes that you think are mistakes, I think the one thing you should do is turn them into realizations. So the more mistakes that you make, the more realizations you make. And I think the more realizations you make, the more iterations and adjustments you're able to make along the way that will help you get one step closer to what you're trying to achieve. So, especially for YouTube, don't be afraid to make those realizations. Don't be afraid to make those mistakes, because you make enough mistakes, you have content to talk about. You're able to talk things from your own perspective, from what actually works for you, and you're actually able to help people, right? I think people are able to relate with you more if you're able to share your mistakes and frame them as insights and wisdom to help them grow along their journey, right? So if you made it this far to the video, I thank you as always. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It would help the channel monetize. It would help me get one step closer to monetization. And through monetization, I plan to reinvest back into the company, the business, the channel, right? For better equipment, for sure. A mic, right? But, and also like software. I'm really enjoying like the software, like long form content and like short form. So see, right? We'll see if you made it. But I just want to say thank you again. And I will be seeing you next video. Peace.